Hey, we're here for Photoshop Basics 2. So continuing on, we've got this document here. I'm going to recap a few other things that we did in this unit. One of those is mentioning the Navigator Panel, which is this little panel here represented by the steering wheel. Now recall that all of these little things around the edges are called panels in Photoshop. And if there's a panel that you cannot locate, you'll go to the Window menu and then you can find all those panels there. Even if, for example, your Tools disappears, if I uncheck it, to bring the tools back, you're just going to go to Window and down here to Tools. So anytime you can't find a panel, that's the place to go. The other thing that's important to note is the panel called the History Panel. This is kind of an easy way to undo in Photoshop. As we've talked about before, when you go to Edit, you can only undo one time. And you can use Step Backward to undo multiple times. But it's much easier to just keep the History Panel open. And then, if you want to see the progression, you can back up and see every little action I did on this document. So if you do need to undo, you can just quickly undo all the way back to a certain point in history. Now, if you start to do things after that point, all of this will be gone and you start a new future, if you will. So that's the History Panel. And the Navigator Panel is used to zoom in and out on your document. That changes your zoom level. When you're zoomed in really closely, you can also use the Navigator to move around in your document. Now, if you don't have your Navigator open and you're zoomed up close and want to move around, all you need to do is press the spacebar key. When you hold the spacebar, and you got to press it and hold it, your mouse changes to a hand. And then you can pick up and drag and scoot your whole document around. So instead of pulling up the Navigator, you can just hold spacebar. Alright, so let's go ahead and zoom back out to 100% and dock the Navigator. Some additional things that we talked about in this unit, I'm going to open up another one of these. Let's say that we want to turn this around so the woot is straight. In this unit, we talked about using the ruler tool. The ruler tool hides underneath the eyedropper tool, so you do have to click and hold to access that ruler. To use the ruler, you click and drag, even with the item at the angle that that item is, and then you press the straighten button. So it will rotate around your object, making it straight. But, and let's look at the History Panel here so we can see what happened. It rotates it, and then it crops it down. And this one's kind of hard to tell because it already has a white background. But it rotates it down, and then it crops it down afterward. And so that's how that happens with the ruler tool. So let's say that this is what I want. Again, I have a color mode issue, so I'm quickly going to handle that. And then I can drag this over. I'm going to undock it, pull down, click this one, choose to resize or not. In this case, I'm going to show you how to resize after the fact. So I'm going to take my Move tool, drag it over, and then I'm going to use those transform handles. Control-T. Now please be careful. I like for students to resize first and then pull over most of the time, especially if the image is really big. You could do it this way, but you need to be very careful to only pull from the corner. Don't pull from here because this happens. Pull from the corner, and that's not enough because you can still mess it up if you pull from the corner. While pulling from the corner, hold the Shift key down, and that keeps it perfectly proportioned. Then you can accept the change, and then you can Control-T to rotate or however you need to go. Another thing that we talked about in this particular unit was layer styles. Now this actually is more in Photoshop A, but since Basics and A are kind of together, we can put it in here as well. Layer styles allow us to give borders around the edges of pictures, for example. Layer styles are accessed by hitting the FX button down here on the Layers panel. And then you have all kinds of layer styles. I'm going to choose Stroke. Stroke is the same as a border. As we've mentioned in class, a stroke goes around the image, but if the stroke is positioned outside the image, as you make the stroke bigger, it will round. The stroke never interferes with the image itself. Now, if you switch it to inside, the stroke will stay pointed, but it will eventually interfere with your image if you make it too big. So you kind of have to decide which one to go with. There's also one that's center, which does a little bit of both. It would eventually round, but it also works its way in. I typically use inside because most of my strokes are not too big. And to change your stroke color, you can come down here to this option. Now you can apply multiple layer styles. If you're going to switch though, don't just check the check mark, click on the button. Now I've added a shadow. Notice you can pick up and move the shadows, though that's probably not the most ideal. You can also modify the distance, which moves the shadow, the spread, which makes it sharper, and the size, which is going to make it bigger but also fuzzier. Now I'm going to come over to this one and add a style, FX. Let's say that I want to put a drop shadow on this one too. And I'll make it pretty big so we can see it. Now I want you to notice something. If I start to move this around, do you notice the other shadow also moves? And that's because by default, shadows use global light. And that means if you change one, you change them all. It's kind of like moving the sun in the sky. So if I do not want this one to move around, let's say I don't want this one to move around while I'm messing with this one, I can detach this one from that global light. So let me put it back to where it kind of was. Uncheck global light, and now this one moves on its own. And so it won't affect this one here. And then we'll hit OK. All right, that's been part 2 of going over Photoshop Basics.